Hi, everybody. Christine Barconi here in the NBC4i Streaming Center right now. We're going to talk about YWCA presents Activists and Agitators. It's an event NBC4 is sponsoring on future housing and resources equality here in Columbus. And I know you guys are going to have some national speakers come in. It's not just a Columbus event. So welcome, ladies. First off, would you just introduce yourselves? Tell us who you are and your roles at the YWCA here in Columbus.
Sure. I'm Christy Angel, President and CEO of YWCA Columbus.
And I'm Sandy Doyle Ahern. I've had the great fortune of being on the YWCA board for about 15 years or so, and I'm now past chair.
Okay, awesome. All right, so we've got an event coming up this week, and October 3rd, Thursday, happening at Columbus State Community College. Can you guys just give us a brief overview about the event and what you guys will be discussing and who this is going to help? Because it's all about community and bringing people together to solve problems, right?
Sure. Well, Activists and Agitators is YWCA Columbus's event where we focus on community change, solutions, social change, and it's our event that we like to say where we activate the community. And so this year, our event is focusing on housing and housing challenges in the Columbus Central Ohio region. And so on Thursday, we will host about 400 of our friends, if you will, at Columbus State, where we will hear words from Jenny Schutz, who is a Brookings Fellow, and she's written a book called Fixer Upper, Fixing America, or Repairing America's Broken Housing System. And then we will have a panel, which Sandy is going to moderate, and I'll let her talk more about the panel. The theme for this year's event, or the title, is Confronting Our Past and Constructing Our Future. And so we're talking about kind of the past and some of the things that maybe haven't been so great about housing and the housing systems in our country. We have an exhibit. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But then we're really going to focus on what can we do, each as individuals, but also as systems, to bring about change in the housing market in our area.
Tell us about this panel that you're going to be moderating, Sandy.
Sure, thank you. I think it's really important to understand there's a tremendous amount of discussion going on around the topic of housing, as there has been for years in the community. But one of the reasons this panel, I think, is particularly important and interesting is because of the makeup of the panel. I've done housing work for a long, long time, and this is the first time I've really seen industry leaders on the housing side sit side by side with people doing poverty and race work together, talking about the need. And I actually believe this is a really pivotal moment for us as a community, where all sides of the table relative to the importance of housing are coming together for a common purpose. And that's really to close the pretty significant gap we have in all types of housing across the region. So we're going to be discussing how we might do that and why these different aspects are important to the different sectors.
Yeah, and I think, coming out of the pandemic, and especially during the pandemic, we saw just how delicate of the economic system is here, not only in Central Ohio, but across the country, with the, evictions and holding off on those, and how close people really are to being without a home, and just the vast, disparity between who has money and who doesn't have money. So I think that's something that more people are cognizant of, which is, good that we're continuing to talk about this as we do come out of the pandemic.
Correct. And, we're ready to kind of move beyond talking about it and ready for action.
Yeah.
Because we have been talking about it for quite some time. And so I think what you're going to hear, and what those of us who, or those who attend our event, whether they are in person or virtually, will hear about some common sense, real world solutions that can be done certainly by the public sector, by the private sector, but also as individuals. What can we do to embrace housing and embrace, housing for all? And I know that oftentimes it's talked about the affordable housing crisis, but affordability is relative. And we're talking about housing needs that cross every affordability, every spectrum, every range. And we're going to have some experts, including someone from the building industry, who will talk about a recent report that really talks about the needs of housing and what we need to build and how much we need to build every year just to keep pace with the growth of our region. We have to remember that we're no longer, Columbus of 500,000 or 600,000 people. We are a metropolitan area that is, close, soon to be over 2 million people. We're very large, and people have to have a place to live, and they have to have a way to get to and from work. It's like the jobs are here, but we also have to make sure that people can live and live in a stable environment so that they can work in those jobs.
Yeah, and I mean, at least just like anecdotally, my brother moved to the King Lincoln district not too long ago. He was able to buy a house there, and the neighborhood has just changed so much in 5 years. And we'll have relatives, or my mom will come over. She's like, "Oh, the neighborhood is changing so much." I'm like, "But you have to think about who that is pushing out, also."
Yes.
And so they're just now starting, after all of the single family homes were essentially bought up by flippers and redevelopers and different things, are finally kind of starting to build more housing in that area, which is a good thing, so people can stay in the neighborhood in which they live and they work and where their families have always been, perhaps.
That's right. And I think we have to also remember that yes, we need single family housing, but we also have to embrace different types of housing.
Yeah.
So in some instances that's rental, it's doubles, it's housing that maybe there's a single family unit, but then there's an accessory dwelling behind it, maybe over a garage, so that an elder person or a student, a child can move from the main house and go live in the smaller unit behind. We have to embrace all different types of housing, including density, and that means more people living in an area, in a more compact area.
Yeah, I would offer one perspective on this relative to how we got here, because I think a lot of people think this is a very recent problem, and actually it's just not the case. If you look back prior to the Great Recession of 2008, we were on track to build a lot more units, and that includes multifamily, single-family, senior living, across the region than where we are today. When the housing crisis happened, the banking crisis occurred, it turned everything upside down on its head. And the rebuilding process since then has not kept pace with where we were before 2008. So we sit in a situation where, by being behind and growing at the same time, we're actually exacerbating the issue. So anything we talk about relative to solutions needs to be a Central Ohio perspective. Columbus as a city is leading on a number of fronts relative to trying to close the gap around funding and so forth, but we need all of the suburban communities to be part of the solution. And one of our panelists will be a housing expert from Morpsey to talk about the regional aspect of thinking through solutions.
I want to actually pivot and talk about the exhibit that you guys are going to have on redlining, because I think when people hear redlining, they a lot of times think of the Jim Crow South, but that is not the case. It happened right here in Columbus, and it is still affecting us today. Can you guys elaborate on that, please?
Sure. So we will unveil the Undesign the Redline exhibit that evening, and it's an exhibit that's going to move throughout our community, in neighborhoods, through other municipalities for months. So it will be around into 2023 and possibly even longer. But redlining, was a practice that really was endorsed and started by the federal government, many years ago. I'm going to go back to the 40s and the 50s, even the 30s. And it was everything from, you're drawing a red line around a neighborhood, or color coding a neighborhood, or color coding neighborhoods as neighborhoods safe for lending, safe for, positive for lending, positive for insurance, perhaps transit, and where transit cut through neighborhoods and where it didn't cut through. So it wasn't just a practice by one particular industry or sector, but it was something that was acceptable and accepted, and then zoning kind of played into that as well. And so we are still bearing the results of that. And so while the redlining is a practice that no longer exists, we still have the results of that. We're living with that. King Lincoln District was one of those neighborhoods, and you just mentioned your brother purchased a home there. And so our goal is to understand what happened here locally, and acknowledge it, but also then to think about, how do we undesign those red lines? How do we undo those things, right? And zoning has become, this is, these are my words, zoning has kind of become the new redline, right?
Yeah.
Zoning is, our zoning code here in Columbus in particular is probably was written in the 1950s. It's been updated here and there, but it's a piece and patchwork, kind of like a quilt of policies and rules and regulations put together. And we're going to hear a little bit from some people who are going to talk about rewriting the zoning code, but that is where land use policy and building housing and the types of housing and kind of undoing some of those lines, be they existing lines or lines that have been artificially kind of drawn using this code, where we can begin to kind of undo that and unravel that and embrace housing for all.
And I think it's interesting, once you're aware of what zoning is and what it does, it's very easy to see as you drive around town and be like, oh, this area is zoned for this, and this is, it's very easy to tell exactly what zone or no zone, even in our suburbs, it's very
That's right.
easy to tell. So I think this exhibit is cool, so you guys can bring attention to it, and so the greater public can understand what it is, because it's not a flashy thing to learn about, but it is just so important and affects our everyday life in a multitude of ways.
That's right. And there are good things about the zoning code,
Absolutely,
right?
yeah.
You know, you don't put a manufacturing site next to
A grade school.
A grade school.
Yeah.
But there are things, and you know, I always say it's been kind of weaponized through the years,
Mm-hmm.
right? Well, we don't want homes with single family garages. We have to have 3-car garages, or you have to have this kind of setback, or you have to have this kind of, you know, acreage. And those things are not allowing us to build, to Sandy's point about what we need to build and how much of it we need to build. They don't allow us to build to the, you know, the amount of housing we need and the capacity that we need, and allow for people to want to live in different types of housing.
The other thing I'd offer about the exhibit is, you know, if you don't have a lot of time to read and really understand what redlining is, it's incredibly powerful because it's graphic in nature. So it's showing a timeline, it's showing pictures, it's showing the reality of what redlining has done. And it takes you from when those laws first went into place all the way up through the ramifications today. So a lot of the work that's being done in the community around poverty, workforce development, education, healthcare outcomes, et cetera, is following those zones that have been redlined. So people can look at it and quickly understand not just how it happened, but where it's affecting Columbus today and what we need to do to literally undesign it. It's going to take a tremendous amount of work in all sectors, but that energy is there in the community, and it's what we're working towards.
Awesome. Is there anything else you guys would like to add about this event that's coming up this Thursday?
Well, while the event is sold out for in-person tickets, virtual tickets, virtual passes can still be purchased. Just go to YWCAColumbus.org, go to our website, purchase a virtual event pass, and join us that evening. It is going to be a fabulous event, some art, culture, a little bit of poetry and singing mixed in with the topics that we've been discussing today. And then we will launch the website for the Undesign the Redline exhibit that evening, and so people in our community and throughout this region can come and visit the exhibit and participate in the interactive nature of the exhibit. Video is also going to be included, so it's something that will be here for a while, and we hope that children and everyone come out to visit the exhibit. And then also I will say that the Columbus Metropolitan Library will also be standing up a website where they will add reading materials and other learning materials to go alongside Undesign the Redline, the exhibit.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a really cool resource, and I think it's going to educate a lot of people about, you know, how Columbus got to where it is today.
That's right.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Sandy and Christy. Really appreciate it. For more information on the event happening this Thursday, you can go to NBC4i.com. If you're watching there, just scroll down. All the information is there. Or if you're watching on another medium like YouTube, like I said, you can go to NBC4i.com. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.